A night of terror. Vlad the Impaler's ambush at Targoviste, 1462. When 10,000 Wallachian horsemen thundered into a camp of 150,000 Ottoman soldiers on a moonless June night, terror became a weapon more powerful than any sword. This is the story of Vlad the Impaler's night attack, the raid that turned back an empire, June 1462. The greatest army ever assembled by the Ottoman Empire snakes through the Wallachian countryside like a monstrous serpent preparing to strike. Sultan Mehmed II, conqueror of Constantinople, destroyer of Byzantium, terror of Christendom, rides at the head of 150,000 warriors. Behind him march the Janissaries, elite slave soldiers feared across 3 continents. Sipahi cavalry, their armor gleaming in the summer sun. Artillery trains hauling massive siege cannons capable of reducing castle walls to rubble. This is not an army. This is the apocalypse made flesh, and it has come for one man. Vlad III, Prince of Wallachia. Known to his enemies as Kazikli Bey, the Impaler Prince. Known to his people as Dracula, son of the dragon. The man who dared defy the Sultan's demand for tribute. The man who crossed the Danube in winter and slaughtered 20,000 Ottoman soldiers in their sleep. The man who, when Mehmed sent envoys demanding Vlad bow before him, nailed their turbans to their skulls for refusing to remove them in his presence. Mehmed has conquered empires. He has broken kingdoms. But Vlad has made the Sultan furious. And now the full weight of Ottoman vengeance descends upon Wallachia, this small principality wedged between the hammer of the Ottoman Empire and the anvil of Hungary. Mehmed intends to erase Vlad from existence, to make Wallachia a permanent Ottoman province, to extend his empire's shadow over all of Eastern Europe. This campaign is personal. Vlad watches from the hills as the Ottoman host approaches his capital of Targoviste. He commands perhaps 20,000 men, mostly peasant levies, some minor boyar nobles, a few hundred veteran soldiers who have survived his wars against the Turks and his own treacherous aristocracy. Against 150,000. The mathematics of destruction are simple and brutal. In open battle, Wallachia dies in an afternoon, but Vlad the Impaler does not fight open battles. He fights with terror. With cunning. With a ruthlessness that makes even his own people whisper his name in fear. For months, he has prepared his trap. As the Ottoman army advances, it finds nothing. Vlad has burned his own countryside, poisoned the wells, slaughtered the livestock, evacuated the villages. The Ottomans march through a wasteland, finding no food, no water, no shelter. Only scorched earth and the growing realization that this will not be the easy conquest Mehmed promised. Then they find the forest. Not of trees, but of men. 20,000 stakes rising from the ground like a macabre forest, each bearing the rotting corpse of an Ottoman soldier. Turkish prisoners captured in Vlad's winter raids across the Danube, impaled and left to die slowly in agony. The stakes stand in perfect rows for miles, a grotesque warning of what awaits any who dare invade Wallachia. The stench of decomposition hangs over the land like a poisonous fog. Crows and ravens feast on the dead, their cawing the only sound in this monument to suffering. Even hardened Janissaries pale at the sight. Many vomit. Some weep. They are warriors who have seen countless battles, but this is different. This is not war. This is calculated horror, psychological warfare refined to its purest, most terrible form. Among the impaled, the Ottoman soldiers recognize faces. Comrades. Brothers. Men who crossed the Danube with conquest in their hearts and found only stakes and agony. Mehmed forces his army onward, but the forest has done its work. Fear spreads through the ranks like plague. These are not the frightened peasants they expected to butcher. Vlad is not a prince who will kneel and beg. He is a demon, and they have entered his domain. The Ottoman host reaches Targoviste to find it abandoned. Vlad has evacuated the capital, taking his people into the mountains and forests where the massive Ottoman army cannot maneuver. He leaves behind empty buildings and more psychological torment, impaled Ottoman prisoners lining the roads into the city, their dying moans filling the air. Mehmed claims the empty capital as a hollow victory. His soldiers camp in the ruins, hungry, exhausted, demoralized. They have marched hundreds of miles through devastated countryside, found no food, no supplies, no glory. Only death and the promise of more death. June 17, 1462. Night falls over the Ottoman camp outside Targoviste. A moonless night, so dark that soldiers cannot see their hands before their faces. The massive army, 150,000 strong, sprawls across the plain in an unwieldy mass of tents, cook fires, supply wagons, and sleeping men. Pickets stand guard at the perimeter, but the camp is vast, impossible to properly secure. The Janissaries maintain discipline, but the irregular troops, Anatolian cavalry, Bulgarian auxiliaries, camp followers, relax, confident that no force in Wallachia could threaten such overwhelming numbers. That in the hills surrounding the camp, Vlad watches. He has 10,000 mounted warriors with him, every cavalryman Wallachia can spare. They have spent days shadowing the Ottoman army, waiting for this moment. Now, as the camp settles into uneasy sleep, Vlad divides his force into 3 columns. His objective is not to defeat 150,000 men, that is impossible. His objective is to kill Sultan Mehmed II. Cut off the head of the serpent, and the body dies. Vlad's scouts have identified the Sultan's tent in the camp center, surrounded by Janissary guards. The plan is audacious to the point of madness: charge straight through the Ottoman camp in total darkness, kill everyone they encounter, reach the Sultan's tent, and butcher Mehmed before the army can respond. If they fail, every man dies. If they succeed, the Ottoman Empire loses its greatest sultan since the days of conquest, and Wallachia survives. Midnight approaches. The camp fires burn low. Sentries yawn at their posts. And then, from 3 directions simultaneously, comes a sound that will haunt Ottoman nightmares for generations: the thunder of 10,000 horses charging through the darkness, and above that thunder, a war cry that freezes blood. Kazikli. The Impaler has come. The first Ottoman soldiers die without even seeing their killers. Wallachian cavalry explodes through the picket lines like a hurricane of steel and fury, cutting down guards before they can scream warnings. The darkness becomes Vlad's greatest weapon. Ottoman soldiers cannot see attackers until swords are already through their bodies. Panic spreads faster than the actual assault. Men wake to screaming, to the clash of steel, to horses trampling tents. They stumble from their bedrolls, groping for weapons, unable to distinguish friend from enemy in the absolute darkness. Vlad's horsemen drive deep into the camp, killing methodically, targeting tent clusters, slaughtering sleeping soldiers, setting fires that illuminate the carnage in hellish red light. The Ottoman camp descends into pandemonium. Confused soldiers fight each other in the darkness, mistaking fellow Turks for Wallachian raiders. Cavalry units mount horses and charge blindly, cutting down their own infantry. Commands and countercommands echo through the night, each contradicting the last. No one knows where the enemy is. No one knows how many attackers there are. The rumors spreading through the camp claim tens of thousands of Wallachians, perhaps the entire Wallachian army, perhaps demons themselves have descended from the mountains. The Janissaries, drilled to perfection, form defensive squares around the Sultan's position, but even they struggle in the chaos. Vlad's warriors strike from the darkness and vanish before counterattacks can be organized. They fight with desperate ferocity, knowing this night determines whether Wallachia lives or dies. Every Ottoman killed is a small victory. Every moment of chaos is precious. For 3 hours, hell reigns in the Ottoman camp. Wallachian cavalry sweeps through the sprawling encampment, their knowledge of the terrain and their compact, coordinated formations giving them devastating advantage over the confused, scattered Ottoman forces. Vlad himself leads the central thrust, driving toward the cluster of tents where intelligence reports placed the Sultan. His sword runs red with Turkish blood. Around him, his boyars and veteran warriors carve a path through human flesh, unstoppable in their fury. They come within yards of Mehmed's position. The Sultan, roused by the chaos, stands armored and ready with his Janissary guards formed in tight protective formation. For a moment, the two commanders can see each other across the fire-lit carnage, Mehmed the Conqueror, who took Constantinople and dreamed of taking Rome, and Vlad the Impaler, defending his tiny principality with nothing but audacity and terror. Then the Janissaries counterattack, and Vlad realizes the assassination has failed. Mehmed is too well protected, the Janissaries too disciplined. The Wallachian charge loses momentum, bogs down in brutal close combat against the Sultan's elite guards. Dawn approaches. In daylight, 10,000 cavalry in the midst of 150,000 enemies will be annihilated. Vlad sounds the retreat. The Wallachian columns fight their way back out of the camp, collecting as many of their own warriors as possible. They leave behind thousands of dead Ottomans. Estimates range from 5,000 to 15,000 casualties inflicted in a single night. More importantly, they leave behind absolute chaos and terror. The entire Ottoman army has been humiliated, caught completely unprepared, butchered in their own camp by a force 1/15 their size. Vlad's riders vanish into the pre-dawn darkness, melting back into the hills and forests they know intimately. Ottoman pursuit is half-hearted and disorganized. The army that was supposed to conquer Wallachia in a week now stands shell-shocked, demoralized, questioning whether any victory is worth facing this demon prince. At dawn, Mehmed surveys the carnage. Bodies lie everywhere, his soldiers killed by Wallachians, his soldiers killed by other Ottomans in the confusion, horses trampled in the panic, tents burned, supplies destroyed. The psychological damage exceeds the physical casualties. His invincible army, which conquered Constantinople, has been humiliated by Wallachian peasants in a midnight raid. The soldiers whisper that Vlad truly is a vampire, a creature of darkness who cannot be killed by mortal means. The Sultan faces a choice. Continue the campaign, marching deeper into hostile territory where Vlad can strike again from the shadows, bleeding the Ottoman army slowly through guerrilla warfare and terror tactics. Or withdraw, accept the humiliation, abandon the conquest. The massive army that was supposed to cement Ottoman dominance over Eastern Europe cannot even protect its own camp. What chance does it have of conquering a principality defended by a man who fights with such ruthless brilliance? Within days, Mehmed makes his decision. He installs Vlad's brother Radu on the Wallachian throne, Radu, who has lived in Ottoman captivity, who is compliant and controllable, and withdraws the bulk of his army. The official proclamations claim victory, but everyone knows the truth. Vlad the Impaler has forced Sultan Mehmed II, conqueror of Constantinople, to abandon his campaign. 10,000 Wallachian cavalrymen have turned back 150,000 Ottoman warriors through sheer audacity and terror. The victory proves temporary. Politics, not Ottoman arms, ultimately defeat Vlad. Matthias Corvinus, king of Hungary, who promised support that never came, arrests Vlad on false charges. The boyars of Wallachia, always eager to replace a strong prince with a weak one, support Radu's claim. Vlad spends years in Hungarian captivity while his brother rules as an Ottoman puppet. But the night attack at Targoviste enters legend, a testament to what courage, cunning, and calculated ruthlessness can achieve against overwhelming odds. The raid becomes one of history's most audacious military operations, a midnight assault on an army 15 times larger, penetrating to the enemy commander's position, inflicting massive casualties, and escaping without annihilation. Military historians study it as a masterpiece of unconventional warfare, psychological operations, and guerrilla tactics. The night attack demonstrates that superior numbers mean nothing against superior tactics, that terror can be wielded as precisely as a sword, that one determined commander can neutralize an empire's might through sheer force of will. But Vlad's legacy extends beyond military tactics. His defense of Wallachia becomes emblematic of Eastern European resistance against Ottoman expansion. While Western Europe debated and dithered, principalities like Wallachia, Moldavia, and Hungary held the line against the Ottoman tide, often through the brutal methods that survival demanded. Vlad fought with cruelty, yes, but he fought against an empire that would have erased his people's independence entirely. The impalement, the scorched earth, the calculated terror, these were not the actions of a madman, but of a prince defending his realm with the only weapons available against overwhelming force. Modern sensibilities recoil from Vlad's methods, but medieval Wallachia did not have the luxury of moral superiority. It had only the choice between resistance through any means necessary or submission and cultural extinction. The legends grew. Vlad became Dracula, the vampire prince, immortalized in Bram Stoker's novel and countless films. The historical Vlad, brutal defender of Christendom, brilliant tactical commander, ruthless politician, transformed into a supernatural monster. But the legend preserves a kernel of truth. Vlad was terrifying. He made an empire fear him. He turned terror into strategy and darkness into a weapon. Vlad eventually reclaimed his throne in 1476, but died within months, killed in battle against Ottoman forces, or perhaps assassinated by treacherous boyars. Accounts differ. His head was sent to Constantinople and displayed on a stake outside the Sultan's palace, a final irony for the Impaler prince. But even in death, Vlad had achieved something remarkable. He had proven that the Ottoman Empire, for all its power, could be resisted. That small nations could maintain their independence through courage and cunning. That the Sultan was not invincible. The Ottoman Empire would continue expanding for another century, reaching the gates of Vienna itself. But it never fully conquered Wallachia, never completely subdued the principalities of Eastern Europe. Vlad's resistance, and the resistance of princes like him, preserved a space where Romanian culture, language, and identity could survive. The modern nation of Romania exists partly because men like Vlad refused to surrender, regardless of the odds. The night of June 17, 1462, stands as one of history's most dramatic military actions, not because it decided the war, but because it revealed that wars are not decided solely by numbers and resources. They are decided by will, by courage, by the refusal to accept inevitable defeat. Vlad commanded 10,000 men against 150,000 and made the larger force retreat. He wielded terror as precisely as a surgeon's scalpel and made an empire blink. The battlefield outside Targoviste is peaceful farmland now, giving no hint of the carnage that unfolded there on that moonless June night. But the memory persists. Every military officer who studies unconventional warfare examines Vlad's tactics. Every discussion of psychological operations references his methods. Every nation facing overwhelming odds looks back at the Impaler prince and finds inspiration in his refusal to surrender. The night attack did not save Wallachia permanently. No single battle ever does. But it bought time. It demonstrated resistance. It showed that empires can be defied. And sometimes, that is enough. Sometimes, one night of terror, one audacious raid, one leader willing to do whatever survival demands, can change the course of history. Vlad the Impaler died 5 centuries ago, but his shadow still falls across Eastern Europe. The stakes are gone, but the memory of what one determined leader achieved against impossible odds remains. In an age when empires steamrolled over smaller nations, when conquest seemed inevitable, Vlad stood on the ruins of his capital and said no. And for one night, at least, he made an empire listen. What other midnight raids changed the course of empires? What other commanders transformed desperation into victory through sheer audacity? History is filled with moments when the few defeated the many, when tactical brilliance overcame numerical superiority, when courage proved stronger than steel. The night attack at Targoviste reminds us that sometimes, in the darkest hour, terror becomes salvation, and darkness itself becomes a weapon. The legend of Dracula was born in blood and fire on a June night in 1462. And empires still remember to fear the dark.